When the Doctor Has a Plug Chapter 2005 to Chapter 2019. Xiaochen was very angry. He was so angry that tears flowed down his cheeks. His big eyes were misty. However, the happiness of seeing his father soon replaced the unhappiness of eating the grandma. Children are still easy to fool, Chen Song sneered, the older, the wiser. Originally, he planned to sneak into his wife's room after the boy fell asleep. But, after Chen Yang found that Chen Song was eating his grandma, he decided to let Chen Song sleep with him. He was afraid that his grandma would be eaten up by his bad father. That boy was very sneaky. Every time Chen Song was about to get up, he found that Chen Yang was staring at him. Chen Song was speechless. The night was silent. Chen Song couldn't sleep. However, Xiaochen couldn't sleep either. He was playing with his card book, babbling and occasionally giggling at Chen Song. Chen Song was lying in bed, looking at Xiaochen. He suddenly felt that this boy was doing it on purpose. Too bad. Thinking of this, Chen Song kept having an idea in his mind. The child was 2 years old. It was time for him to go to kindergarten. Thinking of this, Chen Song felt that it was necessary. Looking at Xiaochen, who was playing with his fingers with his eyes open, Chen Song couldn't help but say, "Son, as a genius, you are 2 years old. At least you should learn to add and subtract. Others already know the multiplication formula. 1 by 1 equals 1, 1 by 2 equals 2, Chen Song opened his eyes wide and was speechless. Who taught you? Mom. Chen Song swallowed his saliva. This boy was a bit of a monster. Chen Song rubbed his chin, thought for a while and continued, Xiaoji could write poems at the age of 3. We can't just learn mathematics. We have to learn our poems and songs. Chu Xianxiang Tiangu. Chen Song was suddenly dumbfounded. How long had he been away? It hasn't even been a month, right? This kid was too ferocious. That's all there is to a genius like him, right? Monster. Chen Song thought about it. If he were to take out physics and chemistry now, he would be too inhumane. Thinking of this, Chen Song decided to convince him with reason. Kid, look, you've already grown up. You can't say that daddy snatched your food, okay? Do you know Kong Rong Rangli? Tears started to fall from Chen Yang's big eyes again. Chen Song quickly stopped. Forget it, a great person would not hold a grudge against a petty person. Sleep. Thinking of this, Chen Song compromised and turned over to sleep. The bed was relatively short, so Chen Song was not worried that the kid would fall off. When he woke up the next day, Chen Song was dumbfounded. Clothes were strewn all over the floor. Did this brat rummage through the cabinets in the middle of the night? However, when Chen Song saw Chen Yang, he burst out laughing. Chen Yang was holding a pair of silk stockings in his hand, wearing half of them on his legs and a pair of rabbit ears on his head. He had already fallen asleep. Occasionally, the kid would laugh. Hearing Chen Song's whisper, Chen Yu got up and walked in. When he was about to speak, he also saw Chen Yang like this. He didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Why did you put the clothes down there? Chen Yu rolled his eyes. Last night, Chen Song came back and put the clothes at the bottom of the cabinet. However, who would have thought that this kid would rummage through the cabinet in the middle of the night? You said that the kid is still young and naive. How embarrassing it will be when he grows up. After that, Chen Yu didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He picked up the clothes and put them on a higher place. He had to say, it was fun to have a kid. Chen Song didn't hurry to go back. He could take the kid to play in the capital. A Disneyland had just opened in the capital. Chen Song took Chen Yang around and decided to bribe this little thief. However, unexpectedly, Chen Yang didn't have any interest in Donald Duck, Bunny, or Mina on the way. On the contrary, when they passed by the library, he was a little excited. This made Chen Song dumbfounded. Was he born to be a straight-A student? This made Chen Song want to beat this kid up. He wanted to let him know that if he didn't learn well at such a young age, why did he come to the library? Unfortunately, Chen Yu was very excited about this. He shouted that his kid was destined to be a straight-A student. They stayed in the bookstore for more than 3 hours. There were dozens of books in Chen Song's arms, all kinds of children's books. This made Chen Song doubt his life. Because it was a children's area, there were many children here. There were many cute little sisters and little brothers. However, Xianxia sat there with the books in his arms and became a scenery. After all, being good-looking was an advantage. Even children of 2 or 3 years old paid attention to the appearance. Therefore, children often came to play with Xianxia. What a pity, Xianxia was simply a block of wood. When a little girl came up and gave him candy with a smile, he just coldly glanced at the candy, pointed to his teeth and said, "It's not good for teeth." Xianxia almost burst out laughing, looking at Xianxia's little adult appearance. Xianxia really wanted to laugh. Even the girl's mother on the side laughed. She was a little shocked. Although Xianxia was 2 years old, he was quite tall. He was about the same size as a 3-year-old. Xianxia didn't expect his son to become a straight-A student. However, the little girl looked at Xianxia with admiration. "Mom, I also want this book." After going to the bathroom, Xianxia came back and made a shocking discovery. Several little girls ran over and surrounded Xianxia, watching him reading. Xianxia was stunned. Had the times changed? Had the learning recovered? Did everyone love to study so much? This kid, at the age of 2, was going to usher in the highlight of his life? Your father, sigh, don't mention it. Like father, like son. Well, right, there were many fun things in the children's park. There were reading, audio, video, drawing, painting, and so on. Next was where Xianxia went and where the little girls were. If the parents didn't agree, they would cry. Seeing Xiaochen so good, these parents didn't think it was a bad thing. However, soon, Xianxia found that he was wrong. This kid was not a straight-A guy at all. He was a typical scumbag. After Xianxia went to the painting area, he started to paint with the teacher. Instantly, when Xianxia finished painting, it could be said that his skills shocked everyone. At first, they thought it was just a kid's doodle, but they didn't expect it to be so good. Even the teacher was shocked. He was really a genius. The teacher quickly came up and asked Xianxia and Xianyu about Xianxia. Xianyu was also very curious because she hadn't taught the kid how to paint. Only then did Xianxia recall that this brat seemed to have inherited the eyes of beauty. Wasn't that a painting artifact? However, next, Xianxia picked up the painting and gave it to the little girl who gave him the candy just now. The little girl was so happy that she was about to cry, and next, Xianxia gave the candy to another little girl. All of a sudden, the atmosphere became stagnant. Suddenly, there was a faint aura of azura. Xianxia was stunned. This kid, scumbag Chen. After returning to Ammonium Yang, Xianxia was not idle either. He opened the system and saw that there was a reward message in the completed mission. Ding! Congratulations on completing the mission and successfully becoming the champion of the International First Aid Skills Competition. You have received 5 recruitment tokens. Looking at the 5 shiny tokens, Xianxia was deep in thought. How should he distribute them? It was not because there were too many of them and he did not know how to use them, but there were too many things that Xianxia needed to do. First, the matter of antibiotics needed a special person to be responsible for it. Because antibiotics were destined to be a very, very long road, it was definitely not something that could be done overnight. One of the things in front of Xianxia was the problem of antibiotics. There were now 4 subspecies of antibiotic substitutes, and the animal experiments were coming to an end. The reason why it was so slow was that Xianxia had expanded the number of animal samples in order to ensure the reliability of the clinical trials. Second, the problem of painkillers. Now, Ensu Medicine needed a helmsman to be responsible for the research and development of new drugs. And, Xianxia felt that it might not be only Ensu Medicine that needed it. What Xianxia was building was definitely not a medicine, but an empire, a super medical empire that covered medical treatment, medicine, and scientific research, and this empire needed someone to help Xianxia. And this person had to be trustworthy. Third, the matter of the cardioversion fluid. During the competition, Professor Croft from the United Kingdom called Xianxia and informed him that the cardioversion fluid had been successfully developed. To Xianxia, this news was truly a pleasant surprise. There was finally a harvest. One had to know that Xianxia had invested a lot of money in it. If there were no more results, he would really cry. The appearance of the cardioversion fluid was a great thing for the cardiac surgery department. Someone had to be responsible for it. After thinking about it, Xianxia pondered slightly. He suddenly felt that, these three things could be combined into one thing. After all, in a precise sense. Whether it was Xianxia Pharmaceutical, Xianxia's new medicine research institute, or the cardiopulmonary resuscitation fluid, they all belonged to Xianxia. In this way, Xianxia could merge these few companies and form a large international medical company. Moreover, if they wanted to continue moving forward in the New Belt Road, they would definitely not be able to do so without the support of drugs. The strength of the U.S. medical industry was not just because of the FDA. It was because there were enough pharmaceutical companies. How many pharmaceutical companies were there in the U.S.? Therefore, if Xianxia wanted to support the medical development of a large country, it was far from enough to rely on the guidebook and technology. He also needed medicine as a strong support. Thinking of this, Xianxia activated a golden recruitment order without hesitation: recruit a CEO of a pharmaceutical company. Secondly, Xianxia also needed a lawyer. These days, Xianxia realized more and more the importance of having a top lawyer. After all, this was a legal society. Having a top-notch lawyer was of utmost importance to a company, especially when traveling between different countries under different legal systems. Instead of raising a group of legal personnel, it was better to personally recruit a top-notch lawyer. Randomly, Xianxia chose to recruit. As for the other recruitment orders, Xianxia did not plan to use them in a hurry. To be honest, there were still many areas where he needed them. Xianxia was reluctant to waste them. Who knew when there would be the next one? Not long after, the phone rang. The secretary came in and told Xianxia, "Sister Gu is looking for you." When Xianxia heard this, he nodded. He got up and went out personally. After all, his relationship with Gu Xian was not just that of a shareholder. Chen Bingxing was his brother. "Sister-in-law, you're here." After Xianxia went out, he saw Gu Xian standing there. Gu Xian carried a document and smiled at Xianxia. "Come in and talk." Gu Xian nodded and followed Xianxia into the office. Xianxia got up to make tea. Gu Xian said, "Director Chen, I'm here today. You should know why. This is the share transfer agreement. I've already signed it. After you sign it, it will take effect." Xianxia smiled. "Sister-in-law, why don't you think about it? It might be very valuable in the future." Gu Xian was in a good mood recently. "I want to manage the family well for Bingxing now. I also know my own ability. If you really succeed, I can't take advantage of you." Gu Xian had already told Xianxia about this matter several times. Xianxia also knew that she had made up her mind. He simply picked up the contract and looked at it. After Xianxia finished reading, he looked at the numbers and thought for a while. Suddenly, he said, "This. Sister-in-law, you can change the money. Back then, to be honest, I took advantage of you. Change the money, and you can sign it. Change it to 100 million. Xianxia thought for a while and said. Now, Xianxia Pharmaceutical's market value was between 200 to 300 million. This was all thanks to Gu Xian. Moreover, Xianxia did not pay much in the past. To be honest, he did take advantage of her. 100 million was not a loss either. Gu Xian hurriedly refused. However, Xianxia did not change the amount and did not sign it. Only then did Gu Xian give up. However, the contract needed to be changed. She definitely could not sign it now. The next day, Xianxia successfully took over Gu Xian's Xianxia Pharmaceutical. From now on, all the shares belonged to Xianxia. When the company started to recruit a CEO, a middle-aged man in his early 40s personally found Xianxia. "Professor Chen, hello. I'm Li Qing." The man was very imposing. His suit was very decent and he did not have any resume in his hand. Xianxia's eyes twitched. Naturally, he received a system notification. Out of curiosity, Xianxia opened Li Cheng's information. Li Cheng, 41 years old, loyalty, absolute loyalty. Skills: business management, perfect level human resources management, perfect level medical market, perfect level. Xianxia was dumbfounded when he saw so many perfect level skills. What kind of monster was this? Gold was gold. And it was absolute loyalty. After a round of introductions, Xianxia directly told him about his idea of joining forces with Xianxia Pharmaceutical, the new drug research institute, and establishing an international medical group. The next day, Xianxia brought Li Qing to various places to introduce him. Then, he officially took up the position of CEO of Xianxia Pharmaceutical. After taking up the position, the first thing he did was to research and develop the new type of oxycodone hydrochloride slow-release tablets. Xianxia had already given the research plan to Li Qing. He did not need to worry about it anymore. The lawyer also followed Li Qing into Xianxia Pharmaceutical. Time passed very quickly. A few days after Xianxia returned, the new antibiotic replacement was completed in animal trials. Xianxia immediately reported to his leader. After that, he immediately began the steps of emergency clinical trials. The antibiotic problem could be said to be the biggest criticism of China in the eyes of the international medical community. After returning from South Africa, Xianxia had gained a lot. For him, the biggest inspiration was his understanding of trauma surgery. So far, Xianxia's emergency medicine had already taken shape. From clinical surgical systems to emergency trauma, internal medicine critical cases, poisoning, he had a very comprehensive understanding. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly had an idea. Start writing a book, completely perfect emergency medicine, and then write it, ding. Write a book and complete emergency medicine, obtain global recognition in the medical field, obtain the ultimate reward. Xianxia saw the system notification. Not only was he not attracted by the words, ultimate reward, but he also calmed down. Because emergency medicine could be said to be Xianxia's greatest wish over the years, and it was also an explanation for all his hard work over the years. He had to do it well, however, Xianxia did not have much time in a short period of time. Whether it was the meeting in May or the antibiotic replacements, new painkillers, and AIDS vaccines, they were all being researched at a rapid pace. Xianxia did not have the time to split himself. Set aside time to write a book. Xianxia was obviously not willing to do that. He did not want to work so hard for so long to end up with a weak finish and a hasty conclusion. Wait until this matter was over. When the new Belt and Road Plan of China Medical Association was completed, Xianxia was ready to retire to the second line. Concentrate on writing an emergency book that really helped clinical patients. April passed in a hurry. Xianxia was basically running around. Almost every day was spent in busyness. Meetings, clinical trials of antibiotic replacements, new painkillers research and development, and at this moment, the secretary knocked on the door and came in. Professor Chen, there's a new development in the matter you asked me to pay attention to. After Xianxia heard it, his eyes could not help but light up. About what? The secretary put down the thick document. It's about the Sackler family and Weiler Pharmaceuticals. Xianxia could not help but narrow his eyes. Now, two very urgent matters were placed in front of Xianxia. One was the upcoming international conference in May that was placed in front of Xianxia. Xianxia did not want his country to be criticized by countless people in public. Moreover, to a large extent, it was not conducive to the development and direction of China's new pharmaceutical industry. The other thing was the chain mission, hypocrisy and deception. Xianxia knew very well that hypocrisy and deceit was referring to the Sackler family. Therefore, before Xianxia returned to China, he asked his assistant to investigate and pay attention to this matter. Xianxia had to be careful when dealing with future enemies. The secretary said, the Sackler family's original company, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, has filed for bankruptcy, and its general manager, Serena Sackler, who is Arthur Sackler's daughter, has combined with VOLB to form Weiler Pharmaceuticals. I just received news today that Weiler Pharmaceuticals' new drug has been approved by the FDA. After Xianxia heard it, he suddenly felt that it was very familiar. VOLB company? Why do I feel like I've seen him somewhere before? Yes, Xianxia suddenly realized. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. Wasn't it the famous international brand VOLB cough water? It was invincible in the world, but it was defeated by Xianxia's new compound licorice tablets in China. At the same time, he also found out the various side effects of the cough water. At that time, the huge compensation almost broke VOLB's capital chain. Even so, VOLB company had not had a good time these years. It could only be said that they were struggling at death's door. No funds meant no research funding. Similarly, this also meant no future. Therefore, at this time, the chairman of VOLB company and the Zackler family hit it off. The new company was about to be established. It could be said that these two companies were birds of a feather. Because whether it was cough water or Oxycontin, they were both opioids. What were opioids? Perhaps many people were not very clear. As early as the end of the Qing dynasty, our famous Tiger smoke sale was actually selling opioids. It was just that at that time, we all liked to angrily call it opium. That's right, it was the name you imagined. At this time, do you still think that opioids don't matter? Chen Song took a deep breath. Good, every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. You are now together. You can clean up together. However, now, Chen Song was more curious about the name of this drug jointly developed by two companies that were good at opioids. Thinking of this, Chen Song said to his assistant, "Pay attention to Weiler Pharmaceuticals' new drug. If there are any samples, get them as soon as possible." Okay. The secretary was swift and decisive. After nodding, he got up and left. Just as the other party left, Chen Song's phone rang again. It was Li Qing. "Professor Chen, the new oxycodone hydrochloride slow-release tablets have been developed, but the experiments have not started yet." Chen Song was delighted when he heard that. Okay. I'll go over now. Li Qing nodded. There's one more thing. The company needs to expand and needs a lot of money. I want to ask you, is it a loan or? Chen Song suddenly laughed. We don't lack money. Indeed, Chen Song really didn't lack money in the short term. Since the cooperation with Google, Chen Song hadn't had time to use a lot of money. After hanging up, Chen Song suddenly heard the system notification sound, ding. Completed the second round of the mission. Successfully established a pharmaceutical company, Anson Pharmaceuticals, and began to research the new oxycodone hydrochloride. Rewards obtained, 1, level +3, 2, 1 golden fortune bag, ding. Second round of the mission completed. Third round of the mission triggered, find Weiler Pharmaceuticals' new drug, conduct research, discover its side effects, and disclose them. Unveil Weiler Pharmaceutical. Fourth round of the mission triggered, subvert the Zackler family. Use the new painkiller to subvert this hypocritical family. Fifth round of the mission triggered, Oxycontin has caused very serious adverse effects, causing more and more people to be addicted to it. Fifth round of the mission, help them walk out of their drug addiction. Hint, the completion of the third round of the mission will be regarded as the completion of the final mission. The higher the completion of the mission, the better the reward. To be honest, Chen Song was also stunned by the system notifications that came one after another. So many missions, however, Chen Song realized that it didn't seem that difficult. Drug addiction, Chen Song fumbled around and took out a book called Addiction Medicine. Perhaps, Chen Song began to plan in his mind. Was the United States really a free country? Chen Song suddenly thought of how he should answer the questions of the American health system during the meeting in May. The world's most opiate and psychotropic drugs abuse country was second to none. How can you question me with such a country? May was getting closer and closer, everyone was a little anxious. Including the old leader, they had come to Ammonium Yang 3 times in half a month, because the matter was really too important. If the antibiotic replacement could really be made, it would be too powerful for China in the international medical field. In the BRI, medical treatment was a big deal and also a major part of the show. No one in this circle dared to relax. Chen Song was no exception. It was the end of April. The secretary handed a small bottle of medicine to Chen Song. Professor Chen, this is the new drug that Weiler Pharmaceutical Company has just passed the FDA's test, Mestrudin. This should be a new painkiller. The specific instructions say that they haven't found it yet. Chen Song saw the new drug and couldn't help but show a trace of joy. Chen Song had been too busy during this period of time, and he was also a little tired. Because Chen Song realized that it was not easy to defeat the United States on the international stage. He had to wholeheartedly prepare all kinds of countermeasures. Okay, thank you for your hard work. If there's anything, just contact me. The secretary nodded and was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something and said, by the way, a black man from Pretoria called and said that he wants to quit the drug with you. At this time, Chen Song's mind couldn't hold anything other than this new drug. After sending the secretary away, Chen Song opened the bottle cap and took out a pill. The light blue pill, a round biconvex film-coated tablet, overall gave a warm and comfortable feeling. Chen Song looked at his only appraisal card. He chose to appraise mestrudin. The active ingredient of this product is oxycodone hydrochloride. Chemical name, 4,5-epoxy-14-hydroxy-3-methoxy-17-methylmorphine 6-1 hydrochloride. Chemical formula, molecular formula, Cl8H21N04HCl. Molecular weight, 351. 83. Indications, to relieve continuous moderate to severe pain, anxiety, depression. Adverse effects of opioid receptor agonists may occur. Tolerance and dependence may develop. Contraindications, hypoxic respiratory depression, brain injury, paralytic intestinal obstruction. Drug score, good. Seeing that the system's score had reached good, Chen Song was honestly impressed. Compared to Constant, this drug was indeed much better. But, is this enough? Chen Song did not think so. Purdue Pharmaceuticals was now the key to Chen Song's attack on the American pharmaceutical industry. Since he wanted to attack from this aspect, he had to deal a heavy blow. Thinking of this, Chen Song kept a sample and asked the driver to send it to the research institute for research. At the same time, the secretary began to conduct in-depth research on America's drugs. Just as everything was being prepared, a piece of bad news came. Professor Chen, the US FDA has rejected our proposal for a new drug for Alzheimer's disease. They said that there are errors in the results of our Phase 3 clinical trial. They want us to reapply for Phase 3 clinical trial. Chen Song's face darkened when he received the call. This was already very obvious. The Americans did this in hopes of delaying the release of Chen Song's new drug for Alzheimer's. Once the application was approved by the US FDA, it was bound to expand its influence. This news made Chen Song hold his breath. Time flew by. April passed in the blink of an eye. On May 1st, a piece of good news finally made Chen Song happy. Professor Chen, the results of the first batch of clinical trials for 4 antibiotic substitutes are out. What's the result? Chen Song was a little excited. Passed. All of them passed. Moreover, in the clinical trial comparison, many of the antibiotic substitutes are better than the 3rd generation and even the latest generation of antibiotics. Li Qing said excitedly. Good. That's great. After Chen Song finished speaking, he was a little excited and wanted to pick up the phone to inform his old leader. However, he just happened to see some information that the secretary had placed on the table. Coincidentally, there was a post-it note from the secretary about the black man from Africa. After seeing this news, Chen Song suddenly calmed down. Because he thought of another thing. That was the Addiction Medical Research Institute. He had always thought that as long as he came up with good enough drugs to prove his ability, he would definitely be able to impress those countries. If he could build an international research institute on drug addiction, he would be able to do it himself. And he could really help the people of those countries. This might be an extremely important matter for any country and leader in the world. At this time, a conference was also being held in the capital, Zhongnanhai. This was a national development planning conference. Those who came to participate were all major governments and leaders. In short, the conference was of high standards. At this time, a voice sounded, "Old Yang, about the medical planning of the new Belt and Road Plan, how is it going?" Hearing the voice, the old leader took a deep breath and rubbed his eyebrows. The progress is very fast, but the specific results are not yet conclusive. At this time, a man took a deep breath and said slowly, "Old Yang, this matter. I still think you're a little hasty. Chen Song is indeed a rare talent, but your expectations for him are too high. The hope of a country can't be placed on one person. The burden should be shared." Hearing the man's words, the people around him quieted down and did not say anything. Sharing the burden was not as simple as sharing the burden. The old leader suddenly smiled. "I think it's more reliable to trust Chen Song. In the face of national interests, the power of one person is really insignificant." "Old Yang, you're a little confused." The man shook his head and said with a sigh, "Moreover, whether Chen Song is reliable or not is still a problem. As soon as he finished speaking, old Yang's secretary suddenly walked in. He interrupted everyone at the scene. The secretary had no choice at this time. After all, this phone call was too important. Leader, Professor Chen is calling. He said that the antibiotic substitute has been successfully developed. The results of the third phase of clinical trials are out. The effect is better than the third and fourth generation antibiotics. As soon as this was said, in an instant, the room fell silent. Everyone stared at the old leader with wide eyes. The old leader happily slammed the table and took the phone. He deliberately put it on speaker and said to Chen Song, "Xiao, repeat the results again. Let everyone hear it." Chen Song nodded and repeated the results of the experiment. Old Yang slammed the table excitedly. "See? My people are reliable." The room was dead silent. No one said a word. After a long while, everyone started whispering. "Great! That's great! Yeah. The antibiotic problem has always been a problem. Now it's great." The old leader said to Chen Song excitedly, "Great. Xiao, you're a hero this time. I'm having a meeting here. I'll go to Ammonium Yang later. Let's talk in detail." After saying that, the old leader looked around with a smug look in his eyes. Chen Song nodded and hung up the phone. The people in the room stopped gossiping. A voice said, "Old Yang, you should take care of Chen Song's matter. If you can support him, support him." It was a simple sentence, but it made everyone around him feel a little shocked. To be honest, as long as Chen Song did not make any mistakes, his status and the status of his child would be very high. Most importantly, Chen Song was only in his 30s. And he had already achieved what he had today, and Chen Song was a doctor. To be honest, no one was willing to go against Chen Song if they were not forced to. He was the best doctor in the world. Even if they were in high positions, they were all over 60 years old. Some of them were even old. So, whether it was for the country or for individuals, they were willing to do Chen Song a favor. So, everyone nodded in agreement. Yeah, Chen Song is young and promising. He's the country's most important asset. We should support him more. Agreed. I even think that it's not impossible for Chen Song to take over Xiao Ruanfeng's position. Most importantly, Chen Song is only in his 30s. It's a blessing for the country to have him. On the same day, the old leader led a group of people to Ammonium Yang accompanied by several leaders. Chen Song brought everyone to the laboratory and personally showed them the antibiotic replacement products. He showed them the results of the new clinical trials. After the tour, Chen Song sat down in the office and proposed his idea. "Leader, I want to start a nationwide addiction research institute." Hearing Chen Song's words, the old leader was stunned. Addiction Medical Research Institute? Why? Chen Song said a few words, "Because it won't be long before we need it. In the following period of time, select a team from the national medical team to study addiction medicine and be in charge of it." The old leader wasn't an ordinary person. After hearing Chen Song's words, he suddenly understood. He suddenly realized something. He asked seriously, "Chen Song, can you really do this? What can you stop?" Chen Song said seriously, "Currently, there are two main issues, drug addiction, and alcohol addiction." When the old leader heard this, his entire body trembled with excitement. He saw it very clearly. If what Chen Song said was true, then what was the new generation one path? When the time comes, many countries around the world would take the initiative to come knocking on their door. As for the United States, there was nothing to worry about. At this time, Chen Song glanced at the old leader, took a document from the secretary and handed it over. Currently, 2/3 of the people support the legalization of drugs. And this proposal has a very strong base of support from the masses. From members of parliament to celebrities to the general public, the support rate is very high. Also, the latest data from the National Institute of Drug Abuse shows that there are 21 million Americans above the age of 12 who use opioids in the U.S., accounting for 1/3 of the total population. Also, 11.5 million of them have admitted to opioid abuse. It can be said to be a real drug empire. Hearing Chen Song's words, the old leader couldn't help but joke. Free America is going to be high. Chen Song smiled. He didn't expect the old leader to be so humorous. However, our research found that 140 million Americans support drug addiction. Not only America, but now in the 5 permanent members of the United Nations, there is a large amount of drug abuse, with varying degrees. If we are the first to establish an addiction research institute, I think that when the time comes, we will have a very strong voice. Hearing Chen Song's words, the old leader also realized the seriousness of the matter. He immediately called to report the situation. The next day, all the major hospitals in the country began to transfer relevant medical staff to secretly come to Ammonium. A 15-day emergency training was started. Moreover, the training was conducted using real people. The patients were all drug addicts in the country. This was both training and testing. They also wanted to see the results. Sure enough, half a month passed in the blink of an eye. When the addiction patients who participated in the clinical trial left, there was a huge change. Although it hadn't completely improved, there was a huge change. This discovery instantly made the group of leaders look at him in a different light. It also made everyone emotional. What kind of magical existence was Chen Song? Moreover, after this, the country began to prepare for the provincial and district-level addiction research institutes. In late May, Chen Song followed Xiao Runfang and led the team members to the 3-year conference of the World's Antibiotic Specialized Organization, CIZR. The conference was held in Sweden. In this ancient city, there were more than 140 countries participating in this conference. After all, antibiotics were a problem for the entire human race. And there was no doubt that the United States was still the big brother this time. They took a short break that day. After all, Xiao Runfang was old. It was also very tiring for an old lady in her 60s to run back and forth. Chen Song was the current president of the China Physician Association and the person in charge of the medical field. He had to go up to participate in the conference and give a summary. Moreover, he also had to face questions from his peers. The next day, in the huge venue, Chen Song was very early. Those who participated in this conference were all officials from the Ministry of Health of various countries. There were also professionals, but there were not many clinicians. However, that was not important. The spokesperson of the United States Department of Health went on stage to give a speech and summarized the results of the 3 years. However, halfway through the conversation, the topic of conversation suddenly changed. The antibiotic problem is not optimistic. China is the world's most populous country. If China does not solve this problem, we will not be able to solve the disaster caused by antibiotics. In fact, compared to humans, the evolution of the bacteria is too fast. I think that China should be responsible for this, and make a review. Every member of the China delegation did not expect this. It was just the beginning, and they were already being targeted. China was the second to speak. Chen Song strode onto the stage and walked up. The applause below was endless. Indeed, Chen Song had helped many people and many countries in the rotavirus incident. However, after Chen Song went on stage, the first sentence was, "I'm very sorry." Just as Mr. James said, we, China, will be responsible for this. For a moment, the audience was in an uproar. No one expected Chen Song to start like this. We will be responsible. Similarly, we also have the ability to be responsible. Chen Song's words were sonorous and firm. Xiao Runfang and the others were overwhelmed by emotions. We also have the ability to be responsible. What a confident sentence. We will take responsibility. Moreover, we have the ability to take responsibility. What sonorous and powerful words, firm and confident. Everyone present, more than 140 countries' delegations, nearly 100 staff members, and more than 200 international media outlets were all stunned. Everyone looked up and saw the young and tall figure on the stage. Below the stage, an old director of the World Health Organization who often attended meetings could not help but say to the person next to him, "Chen Song has never lowered himself in any of the meetings he attended. I didn't expect him to do the same this time." The WHO member next to him frowned and asked, "Shouldn't there be a reason for everything?" The old director suddenly smiled and said, "Do you think Chen Song will go on stage if he doesn't have the confidence?" His words made the staff next to him hesitate. The old director looked up at Chen Song and suddenly looked forward to it. How many achievements would this young man bring to the world? Chen Song's words made the scene fall into a brief silence. Then, the spokesperson of the U.S. Department of Health, James, stood up and asked directly, "Excuse me, Chen Song did not stop. He glared at the other party and interrupted, "If you have any questions, wait until I'm done. Don't you have the basic common sense of diplomacy?" That one sentence, crisp and direct, made James blush instantly. This scene made the Chinese people instantly clench their fists in excitement. Even Xiao Runfeng could not help but secretly stomp her feet in excitement. It was so satisfying. Next, Chen Song turned on his computer and opened the PowerPoint. A few huge titles instantly blinded everyone's eyes. Global Antibiotic Replacement Plan. It was full of posturing. That's right, Chen Song's title could be said to be full of posturing. Even Dr. Tan Desai, who was sitting in the first row, was a little stunned. According to his understanding of Chen Song, he knew that Chen Song was not a person who liked to be high profile. However, this title was obviously a little inappropriate. As expected, Chen Song's title was shown. The atmosphere in the room instantly became strange. Kamal, the head of the U.S. Department of Health, had a gloomy expression on his face, because for a long time, whether it was the WHO, the WTO, the world currency, or even the United Nations, it could be said that the United States had always been an existence that covered the sky with one hand. China's One Belt, One Road initiative and various other plans were to break this pattern. Therefore, Chen Song's title was tantamount to a direct attack on the American World Health Organization. Actually, Chen Song was very clear about this. This time, Xiao Runfeng asked him to attend this meeting. Without a doubt, it was different from the previous meetings. It was to establish the new Belt, One Road health system with China as its core. Chen Song was not a high-profile person. However, when the country needed it, why couldn't he be high-profile? Moreover, as the benchmark of China's medical field, even I don't dare to be high-profile. Who else can be high-profile? This time, Chen Song was here. He had to show that he was domineering. They wanted to show the glory of China's medical treatment. He wanted to draw his sword. The Global Antibiotic Replacement Plan. Chen Song said loudly, "This is a new plan that our country has proposed in recent years after continuous trials and research. That is the Antibiotic Replacement Plan." After that, the PowerPoint screen changed. A variety of new antibiotic replacements began to appear. Chen Song's speech began at this time. This is the first antibiotic replacement, bacteriophage. Everyone is familiar with the bacteriophage project. However, in recent years, there has been little in-depth research. We have used genetic engineering. This bacteriophage has a very good effect against gram-positive bacteria, such as. This is the experimental result. We have used a large number of double-blind experiments to compare third-generation antibiotics. The results of the meta-analysis show that the bacteriophage has a significant effect. The introduction of the first antibiotic had just been completed. Below, there was already a hubbub of voices. Those present, who could attend this meeting, were all pioneers in the field of antibiotics. After they finished looking at the first bacteriophage replacement, they could not remain calm. Each of them was a little excited. It could actually replace third-generation antibiotics. Just from this point alone, Chen Song was indeed qualified to write the title of Global Antibiotic Replacement Plan. Perhaps many people would say that the United States used very few antibiotics. Wasn't this strength? But do you know how many influenza deaths were based on this? Drink more water. This medical advice was the favorite of American doctors. Also, do you know the difference between the medical management of 300 million people and the management of 1.5 billion people? Or do you know the difference between a country with more than 200 years of modern medical development and a country with more than 50 years of development? However, these differences were not important. At this moment, Chen Song's first antibiotic replacement, bacteriophage, had already attracted the attention of countless people. This thing was really amazing. Chen Song looked at the movements of the people below and could not help but smile. Were they already excited? After that, the second one. Antibiotic replacement, antimicrobial peptide. The first replacement, bacteriophage, had already shocked everyone. However, the appearance of the second replacement made everyone suddenly realize that Chen Song's global antibiotic replacement plan was not a joke. He had come prepared. Next, the third one, the fourth one, after Chen Song finished introducing all the antibiotic replacements. The audience was silent. No one said a word. Instead, there were rapid breaths and pairs of eyes full of desire and excitement. It was too shocking. if what Chen Song had said was true, then, this would mean that these 4 antibiotic replacements were enough to replace 80% of the antibiotics. Was it not enough to call it the Global Antibiotic Replacement Plan? Dr. Tan Desai and the directors of the World Health Organization were all excited. China was a member of the World Health Organization, it was also a member of the Antibiotic Replacement Plan, and this time, Chen Song's words were destined to change this order. A moment later, Chen Song said, "Today, I represent the Ministry of Health of China to participate in this Antibiotic Replacement Plan conference. We come with sincerity and generosity. We invite organizations from various countries to join us and work together to control the use of antibiotics. My speech is over. Please ask your questions." After that, Chen Song bowed. Suddenly, there was a wave of applause. The audience was filled with excited voices. Indeed, a moment later, however, no one spoke for a long time. Chen Song was not in a hurry because no one was stupid enough to state their position in public. At this time, Chen Song turned his gaze to the U.S. delegation. Invisible posturing was the most deadly. At this time, Chen Song did not speak, he just silently looked at James, Kamal, and the experts from the U.S. delegation. He did not speak, however, the pressure that his gaze brought to the other party was also extremely heavy. The U.S. Ministry of Health team and the spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs were all listless. Kamar glared at Chen Song with incomparable fury, he glanced at the spokesperson, James. But, James' eyes were dull because he did not know what to ask, he really did not know what to say. Could it be, to stupidly ask Chen Song if what he said was true? To say that he had no proof, that was stupid. What was this place? This was the scene of an international conference. No matter how stupid or brainless Chen Song was, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. Other than this accident, what else was there to ask? And at this time, Chen Song asked the U.S. delegation, "Mr. James, if you have any questions, you can ask them now. Weren't you going to ask a question just now?" In an instant, everyone's eyes were on the U.S. Ministry of Health, Kamal, James, and the others were all pale. However, to stand up and ask a question now was undoubtedly the most stupid thing to do. They could only remain silent. A moment later, Chen Song did not waste everyone's time and said to the reporters at the scene, "The Global Antibiotic Replacement Plan is a plan proposed by our country and leaders a long time ago. Moreover, this is a plan for the entire human race. Our purpose is to fight against the evolution of antibiotic resistance and the adverse effects caused by it. As for the specific steps, I believe that our Ministry of Health will come up with relevant policies in the future." Soon, Chen Song had finished his speech on antibiotics. After Chen Song finished speaking, he got up and left the stage. The audience stood up and gave Chen Song a round of applause. Now, there was no doubt that Chen Song had grasped the key to this global antibiotic conference. Conference, discussion, report the results, review the past, there was no need at all. In the face of absolute strength, everything was fleeting clouds. Chen Song successfully explained this point. He didn't even need to report the proportion of antibiotics we had, or the development of antibiotics in China. Wait, there was no need for him to say these things. He only needed to tell the world, "We have found a way, we even intend to share the method with you." That was enough. Next, it was time for the representatives of the various countries to speak. As usual, this segment was actually a summary and a segment to express one's loyalty. In the past, it was nothing more than expressing their admiration for the American medical system, etc., hoping to cooperate with the American Department of Health, a series of words. But, today's meeting was different from usual. Even the spokesperson of the UK's Ministry of Health announced that China had made outstanding contributions to the field of antibiotic replacement. The friendship between the UK and China would last forever. The UK and China had reached an agreement on the antibiotic replacement project to work together on this project. Moreover, the UK was willing to elect China as the leader of the world's antibiotic specialist organization, CIZR. When the British delegation expressed this idea, Kamal from the United States Department of Health widened his eyes and wished he could kill the Englishman on stage. He was simply a fence-sitter, shameless, it was too disgusting, a bootlicker will die a horrible death. And the UK's representative had made a good start, one after another, other countries such as France, Germany, Denmark, Switzerland, and more countries supported China as the leader of the CIZR. Moreover, they elected Chen Song to be the leader of the organization. For a moment, the atmosphere at the scene was very festive. Not all of the more than 100 countries had to speak. After all, the right to speak was also earned with ability. A country with a population of only a few million or tens of millions only needed to be obedient. The meeting continued. In the afternoon of the same day, Dr. Tan Desai went on stage to give a concluding speech. He glanced at Chen Song and invited Chen Song to come up. Then he said, "Thank you very much, China. Thank you, Professor Chen Song. Thank you for your contributions to the world's medical system. I am also here to solemnly invite Professor Chen Song to be the Chief Director of the World's Antibiotic Specialist Organization, CIZR. I invite China to be the country in charge of this organization. And here, I officially announce the establishment of the Global Antibiotic Replacement Project. The person in charge is Professor Chen Song. Everyone, please give him a round of applause." Suddenly, the audience was in an uproar. The applause lasted for a long time, and below the stage, Xiao Runfeng looked at this scene and tears of excitement flowed down her face. How many years had it been? China could have such fame and appeal at an international conference. This was something that Xiao Runfeng had never encountered since she became the director of the Health and Wellness Commission. Even, in the past, she did not dare to think about it, but now, the reality was in front of her. Xiao Runfeng was so happy that tears streamed down her face. How many years had it been? Our country had finally become strong. Only the strong had the right to speak. Lagging behind, naturally, we would be criticized. Moreover, when we were bullied, we did not dare to stand up and refute. To be honest, Xiao Runfeng asked Chen Song to participate in this meeting because she was worried about this. However, she did not expect that now, we did not need to look at other people's faces. We could stand up and say to each other, "Who do you think you are?" Instead, they needed to look at our faces. It was not only her. At this time, everyone who came to the meeting was excited and indescribable. They hugged each other happily with tears in their eyes. "Chen Song, what you brought to our country was not as simple as technology. What you brought to our nation was unprecedented confidence and self-improvement. What you brought to China was that majestic dignity." The meeting was broadcasted live. This scene, more and more people saw it. In front of the TV, many viewers had tears in their eyes. Unknowingly, tears streamed down their faces. Some of the older ones could still remember clearly how excited they were when China joined the WHO. They were excited that they were recognized by the World Health Organization and other countries around the world, and today, we can stand up proudly and make these organizations and countries listen to us, follow us. And Zhang Nanhai, several old people gathered together. In front of everyone was a TV. They were also watching the meeting. After seeing this scene, the old leaders clapped and cheered excitedly. And the tears at the corners of their eyes were inadvertently wiped away. "Good. That's great. Chen Song, oh Chen Song, you're really a surprise. What you gave to our country is not only technology. With you, China will prosper. P.S. This book is ending soon. Currently, there are 90 league masters. Are there any big shots who want to be promoted? There's a recent promotion at Qidian. 20% of the rewards. New league masters join the group. Veterans will pay out of their own pockets. 20% of the rewards. I hope that before this book ends, there will be 100 leagues. Thank you, big shots." The first day of the meeting ended successfully with Chen Song's global antibiotic replacement plan. More than 70% of the countries agreed to join. Some of the other countries were hesitating, some were probing, and some looked at their American father. However, they did not know that their American father was also feeling melancholy. Indeed, the head of the Ministry of Health, Kamal, was livid. Because he was now in a dilemma. Should he join Chen Song's global antibiotic replacement plan? He was considered a confidant of the current American emperor, so he knew that this plan was not a simple one. This was a critical moment in the medical competition between China and the United States. What should he do? For a moment, Kamal was in a dilemma. After thinking about it, he simply got up and left. Kamal's position caused a commotion in the meeting room. Many countries were thrown into confusion. Damn it, why did he run away at such a critical moment? This was clearly halfway through the game and suddenly realized that the other party was several levels higher than him. Then, he added a big hat to his name and immediately chose to quit the game. That's right, damn it, what's the point of hanging up at such a time? You said that you would lead us to victory. Now, forget it if you don't want to leave, just hang up. Hence, those who did not choose to join could only watch the meeting end. At this time, after Dr. Tan Desai went on stage to summarize, to be honest, he had a headache, because the meeting was originally set to last for a few days. It was only a day, a plan was formulated in a day. How could they be expected to die in the next few days? The meeting would last for at least 3 days. To be honest, Dr. Tan Desai's original plan was about a week. Moreover, he was worried about whether he could come up with a feasible plan in a week's time. Who would have thought that Chen Song would be such a pervert? As a result, Dr. Tan Desai did not know how to arrange the rest of the time. Now, Dr. Tan Desai was worried about the follow-up arrangements, and those 40 to 50 countries who did not choose to join the plan were now anxious about what to say. Hence, Tan Desai gritted his teeth and was about to announce. They stood up. Big Brother had run away. What was there to fight? Join. Wait. Dr. Tan Desai, after careful consideration and research, we have decided to join China's Professor Chen's plan. Yes. We also want to join. One after another, more than 10 countries stood up. Seeing this, Tan Desai immediately smiled. Good, how nice, I didn't expect you to be so useful. Thinking of this, Tan Desai said with relief, okay. Then, it's getting late. Everyone, go back and get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll discuss the specific work matters in detail. Only then did everyone breathe a sigh of relief. There was still a chance. Today's meeting had come to a successful end. The delegation led by Xiao Runfeng was extremely excited. Xiao Runfeng hurriedly called the leader to report the situation. His voice was choked with emotion. How many years had it been? We can finally hold our heads high. In the evening, Dr. Tan Desai found Chen Song and talked to him about some details of development and planning in order to prepare for tomorrow's meeting. The next day, just when everyone thought that the U.S. delegation was going to back out of the CIZR conference, who would have thought, Kamar changed his style and actually took the initiative to apply. Even Chen Song was a little surprised. You surrendered just like that? Chen Song had a headache over their surrender. Because, I, Lao Chen, haven't even used my strength and you've already fallen? Pay. In the afternoon of that day, Chen Song did not beat around the bush. He directly took out the finished products of antibiotic substitutes. Each country received a part of it and went back to do some clinical trials. When they saw the finished products, to be honest, everyone was a little excited. If there were no accidents, the antibiotic conference would end smoothly. After that, all the major member countries would go on stage to give a speech. But at this time, the spokesperson of the U.S. Department of Health went on stage. While acknowledging the global antibiotic substitution plan, he suddenly announced a piece of news. In order to promote the prosperity and development of the world's medical and health industry, our country will play an exemplary role. We will unite with major pharmaceutical companies to establish a joint system of world medical standards that integrates prevention and control, treatment, emergency plans, and many other aspects. The founding meeting will be in October. I hope everyone can participate. When everyone heard this news, they could hear a hint of thought-provoking special meaning. This was a public declaration of war. Thinking of this, the atmosphere in the venue suddenly became strange. Spokesperson James continued, one had to know that among the top 10 pharmaceutical companies in the world, the U.S. had 6 companies on the list. Moreover, the U.S. had strong control over these pharmaceutical companies. Early during the epidemic, the U.S. pharmaceutical company Gilead officially announced the price of its antiviral drug Remdesivir. Then, the U.S. made a shocking move, that was to quickly issue a purchase order. They bought 90% of the company's production of Remdesivir in July, August, and September, totaling more than 500,000 doses. Everyone knew very well what this meant. The audience were all elites. They were all officials of the health system of various countries. They were not superficial when they thought about problems. So, with just a short World Medical Standards combined system, it was completely obvious what the US was going to do this time. This was a blatant threat. It was equivalent to saying that with me taking the lead, we can cooperate. Our drugs will be supplied to you first, especially during emergency plans, to help you reduce all kinds of losses. It was undeniable that the US did indeed have the world's top medical system. However, this was obviously only for the elite of capitalism. For the majority of ordinary people, it was extremely difficult. Hearing these words, Xianxia finally understood why the US wanted to join. Obviously, he was going to do something big. Indeed, medical knowledge was boundless. Medical technology obviously had no territory. However, in the eyes of some people, there was another explanation for this boundless medical knowledge. That was, all of you have to listen to me. These are all my territories. Xiao Runfang frowned slightly. Tan Desai was a little angry. It was precisely because of the existence of these people that the world's medical system had become a foul atmosphere. It had become a platform for capitalists and countries to compete for interests. For example, the United Nations was just a subsidiary of the US. What did they want to do? What could they do? The health system. Was it not the same? However, at this moment, a voice sounded. May I ask, what qualifications does the US have? To establish a world medical standard system according to your standards? As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling face, and don't undermine him in public. But, everyone looked at the source of the voice and found that it was Xianxia standing there, questioning loudly. Xianxia's voice made James, who was on the stage, freeze in place. He did not expect Xianxia to be so impulsive and directly confront him. He even, directly said, "Are you worthy?" This was not logical at all in the past. Okay, for a moment, the atmosphere at the scene suddenly stagnated. Everyone looked at the two of them nervously. There were thousands of people at the scene. However, Xianxia was not inferior at all. Xiao Runfang was very nervous. She was afraid that something would happen to Xianxia. After all, they were not in China right now. There was no guarantee that this group of robbers would do something outrageous. Did they really think that the FBA and CIA were joking? Of course, China sent Xianxia out. Naturally, they came prepared. It was impossible to be so casual. It was no exaggeration to say that, this time, Xianxia came out with security forces that were no less than leaders going to other countries for meetings or visits. To put it bluntly, where did the confidence come from? From strength. Xianxia was very clear. At this moment, he could not be afraid. He was not willing to give away the opportunity and advantage that he had fought so hard for. If the world medical standard system that James just mentioned was established, it would bring a new Bretton Woods currency system in the medical field. In this world, the US dollar could no longer have the final say. Similarly, the US could not have the final say. For a moment, the scene fell into silence. No one spoke, and Tan Desai also looked at Xianxia with some worry. He had seen many dirty things, and he was still worried. However, looking at Xianxia's serious and righteous face, Tan Desai admired him from the bottom of his heart. At this time, the U.S. Minister of Health, Kamal, looked at Xianxia. His eyes were gloomy, his pupils contracted, and he made various plans in his mind. At the same time, this scene was instantly transmitted to many countries and regions in the world through the video. China, Zhongnanhai. When the old leader saw this scene, he quickly arranged for people and contacted the local Swedish embassy and other forces at his disposal. Xianxia was not just a doctor. This was the future of the motherland. Similarly, the United States also began to react in various ways. Time passed by second, the situation was still worrying. James suddenly laughed. Professor Xianxia, this is a conference. You have to be responsible for your words. Xianxia met the other party's eyes without fear and said loudly, "It's because I have enough information and materials that I dare to say such words." After that, Xianxia went up the stage without any fear. There was a USB flash drive in his hand. He handed it to the staff and opened the file. At this very moment, the staff members were also very flustered. He had been a staff member for so many years, but this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. To be honest, he was really worried. At the scene, this was the first time that everyone had seen a direct confrontation in a meeting. It was so exposed and so direct. To be honest, everyone was willing to give Xianxia a thumbs up and say, "You're a real man." At this moment, Xianxia was under a lot of pressure. If he did not pursue the victory at this time and tear apart the other party's face on such an international stage, there was no telling when the next opportunity would come. After that, Chen Song turned on the computer and said directly, in 2023, the number of people in the United States above the age of 12 exposed to opioids is as high as 100 million. Every year, the United States uses nearly 500,000 tons of opioids. More than two-thirds of the people in the United States support the legalization of opioids, and 8% of the people in the United States have the habit of abusing psychotropic drugs. 12% of the people said that they have been addicted to drugs. Among the underage children, more than 30% of them are actively or passively exposed to such drugs. Every year, the number of deaths in the United States due to addiction to psychotropic drugs and painkillers continues to rise. It is already close to 10 million. Chen Song kept looking at all kinds of data. When the bloody numbers were placed in front of them, everyone present trembled a little, because these were not just numbers. Chen Song continued, everyone can see these numbers clearly. In your eyes, what you may see is as simple as a number. Behind each number is a fresh human life and a family. I would like to ask such a drug addict empire, when it comes to treating lives, does it really have credibility? Many of the people present were medical personnel. It was easy for everyone to empathize with him. Therefore, at this moment, everyone felt a chill run down their spines. This kind of feeling was very uncomfortable. Indeed, you have excellent medical standards and systems. However, what was the first consideration in medical treatment? At the scene, the staff and representatives of the Ministry of Health of more than 100 countries were silent. Everyone was thinking about the same question. Just as Chen Song said, did such a country really have credibility? James said loudly, nonsense. You are looking for an excuse. This is not a problem of the system at all. This is the only way for scientific development. This is the product of the times. With the development of time, these will all disappear. What we need is a process. Moreover, in today's world, any country, the 5 permanent members of the United Nations have such things, including China. Do you think it is right to ask such a question? Could you please tell us about your China's data? In this way, perhaps everyone will be much clearer. The atmosphere at the scene was tense. Everyone's palms were sweating. In contrast, Chen Song was much calmer. He looked at the crowd and said slowly, let's go. Indeed, opioids, psychotropic drugs, and even drugs like Ma are available all over the world. Our country also has them. At this point, Chen Song suddenly laughed and continued, but our country has a sound and perfect drug addiction treatment system. We can target the patients and perfectly solve the patient's current situation. At present, our country has built nearly 2,000 drug addiction and addiction research institutes with the purpose of solving this problem. Of course, as everyone has said, this is a problem of the times. However, in China, this problem is constantly being solved. Chen Song suddenly laughed. I'm telling you this because I want to tell you that you should consider the system proposed by some people carefully. If Chen Song's antibiotic replacement plan was enough to shock the world at the beginning, then Chen Song's Addiction Research Institute made many people stand up. Addiction had always been a huge problem in the society to this day. Drug dependence and withdrawal reactions made it difficult for patients to walk out of the shadow of addiction. If drugs were unavoidable, then, for example, drug addiction and mental addiction had caused serious adverse consequences to families, society, and even countries. The PowerPoint changed again. During this period, I have led our medical staff and observed more than 1,000 addicted patients for 15 days. Everyone can take a look at the data analysis. This includes all kinds of addicted patients, but the overall effect is very good. Chen Song didn't need to say anything else in the following time. With the data in front of them, what else was there to say? When the United States Department of Health saw the data, their first reaction was not fear, but yearning. The whole world knew that drug addiction was not a good thing, but social factors had affected many people. More than 100 countries below were full of anticipation, even their eyes were full of fear and uneasiness. Because if Chen Song could really do this, he would bring immeasurable value and good news to all of mankind. For a moment, everyone around turned to look at the China delegation. At this time, although Xiao Runfeng and the others were excited, they were also a little shocked. Although Xiao Runfeng also knew that Chen Song was doing this Addiction Research Institute. But never would he have thought that Chen Song would make such a huge move. to build a world-class addiction research institute, to let the whole world join in. If Xianxia could really solve the problem of addiction medicine, this merit was really boundless. After Xianxia finished speaking, he got up and went directly off the stage. Tan Desai went on stage excitedly. The amount of information today was really too much, moreover, it made him very surprised. As the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tan Desai's lifelong dream was to promote the development of the world's medical treatment. But this time, the meeting, although Xianxia only proposed and did two things, these two things were enough to make his name go down in history. Because once successful, this change was no longer a problem of the current medical treatment, but a future. Therefore, when Tan Desai went up on stage, his voice was trembling. On the other hand, Kamal returned to his seat in a daze and frustration. He wasn't a fool. He knew very well that, just like what Xianxia had shown, it was no longer something that the current American medical system could compete with. What Xianxia had changed was the structure, the general trend. Tan Desai excitedly ended the meeting. I promise that this is the most exciting day since I became the Director General of the World Health Organization. Because I'm about to witness a great advancement in human medicine. The development of medicine has greatly improved our health and lifespan. However, modern medicine has its limitations, and there are also sequelae. Today, Professor Xianxia from China will help us change this. Let's get rid of the antibiotic-resistant bacteria that saved us from the fire and water so that those addicted people can get rid of the haze. This is the end of the meeting. Professor Chen, do you have anything else to say? Immediately, the audience burst into endless applause. At this time, Xianxia didn't go on stage. Instead, he said faintly, "No, but from now on, China welcomes everyone." After that, the meeting ended. Hearing Xianxia's words, everyone couldn't help but sigh. Perhaps this was broad-mindedness. The meeting on the second day ended smoothly. This also meant that this meeting of the World Antibiotic Special Organization had ended smoothly. However, everyone who left had a little thought in their mind: to establish a cooperative relationship with China. Antibiotics were good too. Addiction medicine was good too. These were all things that could help them change the future of the country. This was even a factor that could change the structure. For the people, the benefits were endless. For a politician, wasn't this an excellent political bargaining chip? Therefore, this was Xianxia's brilliance. He didn't mention what drugs he had researched, what diseases he had solved, or what surgeries he had performed. Instead, he raised an international, social, and even political issue. These were closely related to people's lives. After Xianxia and the others left, the security guards brought Xianxia directly to the embassy. Obviously, many people had their eyes on Xianxia. Moreover, in the eyes of some people, Xianxia was a thorn in their side. His existence was bound to affect many things. If others could realize this, so could Xiao Runfeng and the others. However, after all, they were in Sweden. Everything was hard to say. That day, Xianxia didn't leave by plane. The next day, the Swiss officials received news that several Chinese planes would arrive at the Swiss port at the same time. Following that was China's latest fighter jet. This scene directly shocked everyone. However, the Swiss officials didn't have any objections to this. Instead, when the American plane arrived, it was rejected. This time, everyone was very clear how important Xianxia was. He was no longer a simple doctor. And this doctor could change the future and help human health walk out of a new era. Therefore, Xianxia's departure this time could be said to be a big fuss. But for many people, all of this was worth it. That day, Xianxia successfully arrived in the capital of China. For a period of time after that, Xianxia basically stayed in Ammonium. May passed in the blink of an eye. In June, the United States Department of Health personally held the inaugural meeting of the Global Pharmaceutical Standardization System Consortium. However, very few countries came to participate in the meeting. Many of them were just affiliated countries of the United States. Relying on the technology and medical treatment of the United States, there was no way for them to separate. However, for most of the countries, everyone only sent people to test the waters. Many key personnel sent professional personnel to China. They came to visit and learn addiction medicine. At this moment, a fuse event suddenly happened. The new drug developed by the American Weiler Pharmaceutical Company was officially released. After OxyContin completely disappeared, many people fell into a state of anxiety. And the appearance of the new drug reduced many complications. It seemed that Weiler Pharmaceutical had indeed made progress. However, at this moment, Xianxia, who had been silent for a period of time, suddenly published a related paper. And in June, the United States Global Standardized Medical System Consortium was established, which included many pharmaceutical companies, including the top pharmaceutical companies Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, Weiler Pharmaceutical, and many others. The countries in the consortium had priority in terms of medicine, standards, and new drugs passing the FDA review. At this time, and Weiler Pharmaceutical's new drug, mestacine, became the main drug to replace Oxycontin and instantly entered many markets. Even, in order to actively cooperate with the new consortium system model, Weiler Pharmaceutical temporarily refused to provide drugs from companies outside the system. As a result, it attracted the attention of countless markets. At the same time, it also attracted all kinds of discussions and controversies. Weiler Pharmaceutical said that the reason why they adopted this model was because of the requirements of the FDA, as well as the side effects of the drug and other, comprehensive problems. Painkillers were highly resistant and addictive. It had to be said, mestacine, a new drug, had obvious effects in the beginning. It had strong analgesic effects, anti-anxiety effects, and so on. It even made up for some of the shortcomings. As another miracle drug that broke the circle, it naturally attracted a lot of attention. However, at this time, Xianxia's paper directly pulled mestacine down from the altar. An in-depth analysis of the side effects and addiction of mestacine in this article, Xianxia basically published the other party's chemical equation. However, it was precisely because of this that Xianxia analyzed the side effects of this drug from many angles. Indeed, in terms of adverse reactions, it was a great improvement compared to Oxycontin. However, but in terms of drug addiction, it was even worse. And this was actually also a method of the company. It was called technology monopoly. After all, after addiction, they would like to eat your drugs, and the number of purchases would greatly increase. When Xianxia's paper was published, it instantly caused an uproar. After all, you even guessed the other party's chemical equation. What else was there to say, other than thinking about it carefully? Everyone really didn't know what to say. One had to know, medical patents were very strict. And the most difficult thing for a drug was research and development. But now, the other party had directly dug out the chemical cube for him. The academic circle was restless again. Some countries were preparing to make improvements based on this foundation. After all, if they made slight changes, it would no longer be their medicine and would no longer be within the scope of patent protection. At this moment, an important meeting was being held in the office of the Weiler Pharmaceutical Company's upper management. Who stole the secret? Serena looked at everyone present with an ashen face. In the office, none of the dozen or so people dared to speak. The directors of VOLB were also present. Weiler was actually the combination of the original Purdue and VOLB Pharmaceutical Company. How did our equations get leaked? Say something. The atmosphere was solemn. No one spoke. To be honest, everyone present was the old team. If he really wanted to betray them, he would have done so long ago. Arthur Sackler sat and said nothing. In fact, he had already retired from the front line, but now he had no choice but to investigate this matter. How much did they invest? It was all for the sake of becoming famous in one shot. Taking medicine for 20 to 30 years was not a dream at all. However, he hadn't eaten enough for the past 20 to 30 days before someone announced the formula. No one said a word. After a long time, the original person in charge of VOLB could not help but sigh. Actually, Mr. Sackler, Xianxia's horror is far from as simple as you think. Our cough-stopping water back then was also found out in a very short period of time by the other party. If I'm not wrong, Xianxia should not only be a doctor, but also a top pharmacologist. His words made everyone present suck in a breath of cold air. If that was really the case, it was really too terrifying. How capable could a person be? Xianxia's rise in the medical and surgical fields could be said to be sweeping through the field. All the seniors in the field made way for him. Serena slammed the table and shook her head. That's impossible. If he really has such ability, why doesn't he research a new drug to replace Mestrudin? It's clearly, before she finished speaking, a secretary rushed in and hurriedly said to Serena and Arthur, something bad has happened. Chairman, there's a big problem. Arthur's expression changed. What's the matter? The secretary opened a piece of news and said, Anson Pharmaceuticals' new drug has advanced and passed China's clinical trials. Now, they're applying for phase 3 clinical trials in more than 30 countries at the same time. And the drug they're researching is also a new type of oxycodone hydrochloride slow-release tablet. According to Chen Song himself, this drug greatly reduces the drug's addiction, and its pain-relieving effect is better and longer. This is news. As soon as this was said, the room was suddenly silent. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. You say they don't know how to make new drugs, they've done it, and, according to the report, they've done it better than us, even better. What's there to say about this? It's really too sad. For a moment, the entire office was in a state of sighing. Serena's expression changed, and she hurriedly said, Investigate, I don't believe there's such a powerful drug. There must be a breakthrough. Have they submitted an application to the FDA? After a long silence, the secretary shook her head silently. No. Suddenly, the room was silent again. Find it. No matter what method we use, we must find it. The meeting was adjourned. Serena looked at Arthur again, with a murderous look. Father, Chen Song can't be left alive. Arthur smiled bitterly. Why didn't you do it after I said it last time? Serena was stunned, because she didn't think that someone could attack her. Arthur continued, Also, who do you think you are? Do you think you can kill Chen Song now? Even if you can, the entire Sackler family will be buried with him. After saying that, Arthur sighed. He suddenly realized that times had changed. A month later, the new type of oxycodone hydrochloride slow-release tablet developed by Chen Song was sent to Weiler's Research Institute. However, 3 months were almost over. There was still no news. The researchers were about to cry. This was not a product at the same level of technology. How could it be compared? In October, the New Belt and Road Conference was getting closer and closer. But at this time, a piece of news excited many people. Chen Song won this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. The news of Chen Song winning the Nobel Prize spread like wildfire and instantly attracted the attention of countless people. Almost the entire country was promoting the news of Chen Song winning the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize was probably one of the most valuable awards in the medical field. However, did Chen Song really need a Nobel Prize to prove himself? Chen Song was sitting in his office when his secretary came in and said with a smile, Director Chen, the Nobel Prize Judging Center called and said that they hope you can attend the award ceremony. The secretary was recruited by Chen Song with a recruitment order and was very trustworthy. Other than the secretary, there was also a driver. However, he was now sent to take care of Qin Yu and Xianxia. Originally, the country had arranged a personal bodyguard for Chen Song, but Chen Song refused. After all, he had too many secrets, many of which he did not want others to know. Therefore, he directly used a golden recruitment order to complete the recruitment. A perfect-grade bodyguard was now by Chen Song's side at all times. However, Chen Song used a recruitment order to recruit him, so the secretary and bodyguard seemed to be able to feel that they were all on the same side. Therefore, they did not have much protection. Hearing what the secretary said, Chen Song shook his head. Just help me reject them. Just say that I don't have time recently. Hearing Chen Song's words, the secretary nodded and left. To be honest, Chen Song did not want to go to Switzerland to receive the award. There were only 2 things that Chen Song was more concerned about. The first was the success of the BRI, the second was to complete the emergency medicine. On the other side, after Chen Song sent the bodyguard away, he opened the reward he had just received. The chain mission had been completed. The 3rd round of the mission has been completed. Successfully found a new drug for Weiler Pharmaceuticals, conducted research, discovered its side effects, and disclosed them. Unveiled the veil of Weiler Pharmaceuticals. Rewards received: 1. Research Progress in Hypertension 2030 edition. 2. Level +2, the chain mission of hypocrisy and deception has been completed. Do you want to receive the final reward? Chen Song shook his head and refused the final reward. After all, according to the system prompt, there was still the fourth round of the mission, which was to destroy the Ziegler painkiller family, and the fifth round, which was to solve the addiction problem of Osconstant. After completing these two tasks, the system would definitely reward him handsomely. Chen Song took out the Research Progress on Hypertension 2030 edition and flipped it open with some anticipation. As expected, it was a book written by him. Suddenly, Chen Song had a premonition. Was he overdrawing his future? Take out your future items and use them now. After looking through the table of contents, he realized that there was a new system in addition to supplementing the original mechanism of hypertension. For a moment, Chen Song was excited. This book still did not provide a cure for high blood pressure, but it gave Chen Song some new directions. However, Chen Song did not continue reading. Instead, he closed the book and placed it in the virtual space. The virtual space could not store anything other than the system's reward items. What Chen Song needed to do next was to complete the fourth and fifth round of the Hypocrisy and Deception chain mission. During this period of time, ammonium yang had become the focus of international medical treatment, ever since the antibiotic conference held by the World Health Organization in May. One after another, many countries came to China with curiosity to visit ammonium yang. To be honest, after arriving, everyone was shocked. That was because they suddenly realized that they knew nothing about China's medical treatment. How many years had it been? China had actually given birth to such a great city. Every country's leader who came to visit was extremely shocked. Moreover, what made them the happiest was that they could get a chance to see Chen Song personally. Chen Song was also helpless. In a moment of carelessness, he had actually become a mascot. During this period of time, it was not that Chen Song did not want to attend the Nobel Prize award ceremony. It was that he really did not have the time. The old leader said, "That Nobel Prize, it doesn't matter if you don't want it. Besides, if he really has the heart, he would have come over personally to give you the award. Think about it, you winning the Nobel Prize is actually giving face to the Nobel Prize. It's to give him face." Chen Song was silent for a long time. He was actually speechless. Forget it, the old leader was right. Right now, business was more important. First, he had to scare the leaders of these countries, then persuade them to join the New Belt and Road Initiative. That was the right thing to do. Next, after seeing the patients, these old leaders were all convinced. Looking at the old leaders, all of them wanted to borrow Chen Song for a few days. Naturally, the old leaders would not let him go. Chen Song was not a panda now. He could not be lent to them. He was a national treasure among national treasures. In the following moments, Chen Song went to do another thing. He brought these leaders and officials from the Ministry of Health to visit their hospitals, research institutes, pharmaceutical factories, training bases, and so on. After this trip, the people of these countries were shocked to the point that they were dizzy. They were completely immersed in the pie that Chen Song had painted. There were all kinds of newly marketed drugs, the newly developed antibiotic substitutes, new painkillers, Alzheimer's drugs, and a soon-to-be established hypertension research base. There were all kinds of new medical equipment and a surgical improvement base. There were the top medical concepts, and new guidelines appeared every day to affect and benefit mankind. Similarly, there was the world's most advanced medical training base. There was also the world's most advanced addiction medicine research institute. Even many large pharmaceutical companies had set up branches here. After the tour was over, did they have other ideas? The most important thing was that what Chen Song said was true. This trip was over. These people only had one thought in their hearts: cozy up to him. That's right, the current base had matured. And all of this could not be separated from Chen Song. It could even be said that Chen Song was the core of the ammonium yang base. Without him, everything would be in vain. Now, even the people of Dongyang province were saying that ammonium yang could do without a mayor and a health committee director, but it definitely could not do without Chen Song. That was indeed the case. Chen Song did not only bring medical treatment to this city. He actually helped the local people. Because now, a perfect medical system had been established in ammonium yang city. With the Second People's Hospital of Dongyang province as the core, the surrounding 4 directions were fully radiated. It had already radiated to 4 prefecture-level cities, including ammonium yang city, and the various medical concepts, medical management, and development plans proposed by Chen Song were being performed every day. Similarly, miracles were being born every day, at this time, many countries had already realized. The center of gravity of the world's medical treatment was shifting from the United States to China. If they did not cozy up to him at this time, they would definitely be muddle-headed. Time passed very quickly. Mid-October, the new Belt and Road Conference was about to be held. And the venue of the conference was set in Ammonium. This central city that had no characteristics 5 years ago, but today, it had vaguely become an international medical center. A few days before the conference, Kang Xiangmin called Chen Song home and asked his wife to cook a table full of dishes. Both of them drank some local finjiu. As they drank, Kang Xiangmin began to get excited. Xiaochen. You've made me, Kang Xiangmin. You've also made Ammonium. It can even be said that you've made China. Chen Song smiled and drank with him without saying anything. Kang Xiangmin was really happy. A few years ago, after the country set up this place as a special administrative region, you saw it too. Everyone was laughing at me. What about now? We did it, we succeeded. In less than 5 years, I, Kang Xiangmin, have given the country a satisfactory answer. Now, whoever comes to Ammonium has to give a thumbs up and say that they're awesome? This is your credit. I don't dare to take the credit. Come, let me toast to you. Chen Song continued to drink with him and said, Dad, drink less. Kang Xiangmin smiled and waved his hand. Xiaochen, let me tell you. A few years ago, when I acknowledged you as my godson, someone said that you were cozying up to me. Now it seems that that person really has no taste. I'm the one who's cozying up to you. Chen Song knew very well that Ammonium Yang's development was so smooth. Or rather, his idea could be completed successfully. It was inseparable from Kang Xiangmin's help. One had to know that this society was very complicated. It was not as simple as one thought. However, Chen Song's journey was really smooth, because behind him, there was a group of people who helped him escort. In fact, thinking about it carefully. In this life, when was the most difficult time for you to walk? It was the starting point. When everything was on the right track, it would be logical when you continued to walk. Kang Xiangmin suddenly smiled and said to Chen Song, Come, let me tell you a little secret. Some time ago, the leader asked me to talk. Chen Song's eyes lit up when he heard that. It was obviously not a joke to talk to him at this time. He said that I still have hope to take the next step. As expected, Chen Song quickly congratulated him. However, Kang Xiangmin waved his hand. I know. I, Kang Xiangmin, can be where I am today because God has eyes and introduced me to a godson. Others rely on their godson. I rely on my godson. Haha. It was not only Kang Xiangmin. With Chen Song's rise, more and more people around him had already walked a path that was completely inconsistent with their lives. His father-in-law, Xianxia, applied for retirement. He really did not dare to do it anymore. He was a director of a division. In just a few years, he had achieved a leap in his life. He could actually skip the department level. When he retired, he was a deputy minister, because Dongyang Medical University was now only one level lower than the Chinese Academy of Sciences, a deputy ministerial unit. No one dared to think about life. Zheng Guotan, he had also successfully completed a transformation from a real estate tycoon. He was now a major shareholder of Wanhe Group. Wanhe Group was successfully listed this year and became the largest pharmaceutical company in the country. Its market value exceeded 100 billion, even the young doctors who had started out with Chen Song were shocked. Those junior doctors in the emergency department were now wearing the title of experts. Wang Yong was now a core surgeon in the emergency department of the 2nd Provincial Hospital. He was Chen Bingxing's right-hand man. Luo Zhou was not inferior at all. This year, he had also successfully applied for the National Nature Fund project. The current Lao Chen was no longer a salted fish. He had become an expert in the field of hepatobiliary and pancreatic surgery in the country. He was the successor of Chen Song's digestive tract reconstruction. He was also the vice president of the World Society of Digestive Surgery. Therefore, this also allowed Gu Xian to take care of the family with peace of mind. And Yanjun, the gentle and elegant teacher of Chen Song's hand surgery, had now become the successor of Chen's tendon suture technique with Tan Zhonglin. They were giving all kinds of lectures all over the world. The silly Wan Qian of the 2nd Provincial Hospital had also successfully taken over in Yanjin's job. He was the deputy director of the 2nd Provincial Hospital's Tendon Rehabilitation Center. Compared to the success of these people, the happiest person was Dr. Xianxia. Xianxia's current job was really salted fish, however, life was really sweet. She had given birth to twins, and her husband's life was very harmonious. It was also a much-told story in the 2nd Provincial Hospital's emergency department. As for Li Baoshan, ever since the knot in his heart was untied, he would look for Xianxia to drink from time to time. The older generation of directors had slowly begun to retreat to the second line. The younger generation was slowly replacing the glory of the older generation. The day before the New Belt and Road Conference, the expert group from Sweden's Karolinska Institute and the Nobel Prize Committee came to China's Ammonium Yang. Mengxi's teacher also came along. They were here to get in through the back door. That's right, the current Nobel Prize Committee members were in a difficult position. They were also very worried that Chen Song would not accept the award. After all, Chen Song now published some papers every year. And many of them overturned the research results of people who had won the Nobel Prize. This made the Nobel Prize Committee members very helpless. In the beginning, they deliberately did not give Chen Song the award. Both sides were competing. However, now it was obvious that they were no match for Chen Song. What if they could not win, join in? Hence, this year, they extended an olive branch to Chen Song. However, who would have thought that Chen Song would directly refuse to participate in the award ceremony? This news made the judges hold back for a long time. However, what if he did not come? They could not possibly deliver themselves to him, right? When everyone heard this idea, they instantly lost control. Immediately, they got up and came to China personally. Moreover, they personally looked for Mengxi. After all, Mengxi was also a graduate of Sweden's Karolinska Institute. No matter what, it was still his alma mater. Mengxi was also Chen Song's teacher. Everyone thought about it and decided to personally come to China to give Chen Song the Nobel Prize. Hence, the day before the New Belt and Road Conference, Chen Song was washing diapers at home. Suddenly, he received a call from Mengxi. Chen Song, the Nobel Prize Committee and Sweden's Karolinska Institute have personally come to Ammonium Yang to give you the award. After Mengxi heard the news, he was a little confused. After all, this kind of thing really destroyed his worldview. You're the Nobel Prize winner, can you not be so lowly? But, after Chen Song picked up the call, he was also stunned for a moment. He said quietly, "Tell him that I'm busy washing diapers and don't have time." When Mengxi heard this, he was instantly dumbfounded. Was the world in chaos? Was the Nobel Prize not as important as washing diapers? Mengxi was in a mess. P.S. Begging for monthly votes. Begging for monthly votes at the end of the month. Double the period. If you don't give it, there won't be any more. As everyone can see, it's coming to an end recently. I estimate that it will officially end on the 31st. The news of Chen Song refusing to go to Sweden to receive the award had already spread among the major media outlets. Other than being boastful, everyone had nothing else to say. After all, his strength had reached the point where he did not need the Nobel Prize. Even if there was no award, Chen Song would be recorded in history and become an indelible mark in the history of medicine. However, who would have thought, the Nobel Prize professional judging team came to China. They would personally present the award to Chen Song. Since they had already come, Chen Song could not really not give them face. After all, he still had to give face to the Nobel Prize. If he died of old age and met Brother Nobel in the afterlife, it would be quite awkward. Chen Song did not care about changing his clothes and carried the child to the venue. When they saw Chen Song in casual clothes and carrying the child, everyone was stunned. This was too sloppy, wasn't it? However, when the Nobel Prize staff saw this, they finally heaved a sigh of relief. It was good that he was here. The other party did not mind. After all, he did not need a bicycle as long as he could win the award. As a result, the entire award ceremony was held very sloppily. Chen Song hurriedly took the trophy. The other party was afraid of returning and quickly handed the trophy, certificate, and other things to Chen Song. The ceremony took less than 5 minutes. It made the media wonder if this was a fake award ceremony. Seeing Chen Song accept the award, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Professor Chen, in the future, let's work together. If you have any recommendations, just say it. the chairman of the judging panel said with a smile. In his heart, he thought, since I've already joined, I don't think I'll be in trouble in the future, right? Chen Song was very happy when he heard that. He did not care, but it did not mean that his team did not need it. Thinking of this, Chen Song immediately nodded and agreed. Okay, I happen to have a list here. Sorry to trouble you. Chen Song did not stand on ceremony. When the other party heard that, he almost cried. I was just joking, and you took it seriously? Personally presenting the Nobel Prize to Chen Song was not a small matter. Even if the process was very sloppy, the significance was extraordinary. This was probably the first time something like this had happened since the establishment of the Nobel Prize. The Chinese people were naturally overjoyed. This was the face of the cards. On the other hand, the academic circle exploded. Many experts and scholars were sourly mocking the Nobel Prize judging center. They didn't dare to criticize Chen Song too much. After all, they had learned from the mistakes of the past. Anyone who dissed Chen Song had already been dealt a blow by Chen Song using scientific methods to reduce the dimension. Now, the entire medical industry and the academic community had a question: which field was Chen Song good at? No one dared to say anything. They were afraid that Professor Chen would take out their research results and whip their corpses. That would be too embarrassing. Therefore, he did not dare to criticize Chen Song. Instead, he mocked the Nobel Prize since he would not be able to win it anyway. However, the director of the Nobel Prize Evaluation Center did not feel humiliated. Instead, he openly announced to the public, special people deserve special treatment. Our Nobel Prize is targeted at the most capable and influential scientists. Professor Chen Song will not be the only one. I look forward to you becoming the people who will receive the award in person. Look, these words were so dignified that these people had nothing to say. In any case, Chen Song could be considered to have set a precedent for the Nobel Prize. However, this also made the other awarding organizations very nervous. They were all thinking about the same thing. Did this mean that when they gave the award to Professor Chen Song in the future, they would have to personally go to China to present the award? This D*MN Nobel Prize Judging Center. What kind of precedent did they have? Chen Song looked at the Nobel Prize in his hand and felt very happy. Ding! You have won the Nobel Prize. Rewards received: 1. Modern Operating Theater X1, 2. Nobel Suit. Chen Song looked at the system rewards and could not help but be stunned. Damn! Looking at the two rewards that were shining at the same time, Chen Song almost knelt down. One was a modern operating theater, and the other was a gold Nobel Suit. Amazing. Modern operating theater, an operating theater that is more scientific, sterile, and suitable for high-precision surgery. Can be activated at any time. Chen Song hesitated for a long time and decided to find a place to place this thing so that it could be used to perform some high-precision surgery. Nobel Suit. After equipping, scientific research ability plus 200, innovation ability plus 100, additional skill, Nobel Light. Nobel Light. After activation, your team's scientific research speed and innovation ability will be greatly improved. Duration: 1 month. Cooldown time: 1 year. Chen Song looked at these two rewards and could not help but sigh. The Nobel Prize was amazing. At least these two rewards were very practical for him. One was a modern operating theater. The other was a scientific research tool. The members of the Nobel Prize Committee were not in a hurry to leave. Instead, they stayed in Ammonium. While they were visiting, they also happened to be in time for the New Belt and Road Conference. The next day, the New Belt and Road Conference was officially held in Ammonium. There were more than 40 countries participating in this conference compared to the first one. Whether it was the scale or the fields involved in the conference, there had been great progress. In the past few years, the country had developed rapidly. Because of the first Belt and Road Conference, 5 years later, the results were very obvious. The countries and organizations in the Belt and Road Conference had developed and improved significantly compared to a few years ago. Therefore, this conference was of great significance to any country. Similarly, Chen Song was definitely a beneficiary of the new Belt and Road Conference. Chen Song's medical equipment and drugs now wanted to go out of the country and into the world. The new Belt and Road Conference was indispensable for medical assistance and other related policies. The conference lasted for almost a week. There were too many fields involved. Every day, there was good news coming out. Similarly, every day, the United States was worried. Because one side was weak and the other side was strong. The United States' position as the hegemon in all aspects was also decreasing as the technological gap narrowed, in the era where science and technology were the number one productivity. The development of science and technology was bound to enter a period of slow decline from a period of rapid development. And this period was the time for the country to catch up. And at such a critical time, Xianxia's strategy of developing the country through medical treatment had played an important and indispensable role. A day after the UZI of the conference, the new Belt and Road Conference was officially implemented with China's Medical and Health Strategy Revitalization Plan. The Medical Belt and Road Conference also became the plan with the most countries participating in this conference. Including the European Union, 140 countries all joined China's Medical Belt and Road Strategy. In an instant, after this news was released, it instantly shocked the world's media, because the previous FDA standards in the United States were not used by so many countries. The establishment of a new generation of medical products. Xianxia had become the biggest beneficiary. After all, Xianxia had the most medical companies in Dongyang province. A large number of new drugs were on the market, a large number of new instruments were exported, and a large number of medical concepts. These had become the needs of many countries: the market of new drugs, the rapid production of antibiotic substitutes and testing in other countries. In just a year, the global antibiotic substitution plan had been fully implemented. Even the FDA had no choice but to introduce the use at this time. After all, if Xianxia's antibiotic substitutes were stuck, the American people would not be willing. And coincidentally, Xianxia had a good impression in the hearts of Americans. There was even a large number of medical practitioners in the United States who worshipped Xianxia beyond their nationality. And coincidentally, Americans had a very weak sense of national consciousness. Therefore, whether it was the external pressure of more than 100 countries, it was the internal pressure of hundreds of millions of Americans that made the FDA have no choice but to pass the market of antibiotic substitutes. And this opening, it was like a torrential river that could not be stopped at all, and at the same time, the painkillers produced by Janssen Pharmaceuticals also quickly entered the market. The market this time was bigger than expected. Once Xianxia's new drug hit the market, many medical and clinical staff quickly seized the first wave of opportunity to conduct clinical analysis on the efficacy and side effects of Xianxia's painkillers. And as a comparison, it was Weiler Pharmaceuticals' new drug, Mestacine. All of a sudden, from the high-level impact factor of The Lancet to various civilian journals, there were comparisons between the two drugs everywhere, and there was no doubt whether it was the analysis of the painkilling effect of the drug, or the analysis of addiction, drug side effects, complications, and other adverse reactions. Janssen Pharmaceuticals' new painkillers had an incomparably obvious advantage. Finally, there was the price. Mestacine was 5 times higher than the market price. In this way, the guidelines and doctors of various countries did not need to consider at all. For the patients, there was no room for consideration. This caused Weiler Pharmaceuticals' orders to be greatly reduced, reducing their market share by more than 80%. However, there were still 20% of users who were very strong. What Weiler Pharmaceutical did not expect was that what overwhelmed them was not the 80% market share, but the venting from the 20% loyal users. This was because a black researcher had discovered it. Mestacine had inherited the addictive properties of Oxycontin. And in terms of addiction, it had the same effect. Many patients who were already addicted to Oxycontin could not choose other drugs. Otherwise, there would be a strong withdrawal reaction, and at the same time, it would aggravate anxiety and depression. Along with the release of this article, many patients realized that they had become lambs in the Sackler family's enclosure. This caused the people of free America to start protesting on the streets. At the same time, many lawyers walked into the court and submitted a lawsuit. They once again sued the newly established Weiler Pharmaceutical Company and demanded compensation for the losses of the people. In the short span of 3 months, Weiler Pharmaceutical had received more than 3,000 lawsuits. It was more than what Purdue Pharmaceuticals had received in more than 10 years. For a moment, the entire Sackler family was stunned. Serena helplessly asked her father for help, but Arthur Sackler was also helpless. He looked at the gloomy sky outside and could only sigh. Times had changed. Other than that, he had no other solution. Just as everyone was calling for compensation from Weiler Pharmaceutical Company, news from Mexico had spread. In Chen Song's Addiction Research Institute, he had successfully completed the withdrawal of OxyContin. As a country that bordered the United States, the United Mexican States was actually more chaotic than the United States. It was filled with all kinds of crimes. Guns, drugs, and gangs seemed to have become synonymous with this place. However, this time, after Mexico joined China's new Belt and Road medical system, the state machine was the first to introduce something else. Instead, it was Chen Song's Addiction Medical Research Institute. The Mexican government was ready to make drastic changes. Forced detoxification had become the main theme here. In a year, a large number of addicted patients left the institute. The nightmares of the past made them afraid to touch these things again. The president of Mexico personally issued a letter of gratitude. The greatest thing about Professor Chen Song is not only how profound his surgical skills are, but also how he has contributed to the health of the people. Your appearance will change the world's impression of Mexico. You will become Mexico's friendship. Therefore, the first huge bronze statue of Chen Song was erected in the central garden square of Mexico City. That was something that Chen Song did not expect. The incident in Mexico directly became the fuse for the destruction of Mestalla. Countless countries took the initiative to go to Mexico to quit drug addiction. In just half a year, Weiler Pharmaceutical declared bankruptcy again. In just a few years, 2 consecutive bankruptcies made the hypocritical and deceitful Zäckler family withdraw from the stage of history. Chen Song, who was far away in China, also received the final mission reward. When he looked at the reward in his hand, Chen Song suddenly fell silent. Because the reward this time was too generous. 4th round of mission completed. Received, STD Drug Research Guide. Final mission completed. Received, Nerve Auxiliary Growth Factor. Looking at the system reward, Chen Song was not happy. Instead, he calmed down, and at this moment, the 35-year-old Chen Song suddenly realized that the existence of diseases might make people feel even more reverent, if there was no final respect for diseases and health. What kind of existence would humans become? Therefore, after hesitating for a long time, Chen Song decided to hide something. However, for some special diseases, Chen Song decided to intervene. And so, Chen Song's team even developed an AIDS vaccine. The announcement of this news, it was more explosive than any other time. AIDS vaccine? This news was a disaster for Africa, for any country in the world. However, the vaccine was not a cure. It could only prevent the malicious spread to a certain extent. And in October 2027, Chen Song won 2 Nobel Prizes again. And this time, the awards were the Nobel Peace Prize and the Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology. Chen Song also became the person who won 2 Nobel Prizes in the same year. It was to reward Chen Song's Addiction Medical Research Institute for its most outstanding contribution to world peace. And this year, Chen Song was 35 years old. He won the Nobel Prize twice. He was published in Time magazine in the United States several times. He also became the ambassador of the world for drug addiction. He became the idol in the hearts of countless people, and this year, Chen Song suddenly announced that he would withdraw from the Nobel Prize selection stage and would no longer participate in any medical awards in the world. P.S. I just saw it. Thank you to the big boss Dongming Xingye Alliance for tipping me 100,000 Qidian coins and becoming the 95th leader of this book. Thank you, big boss. It seems that there is no hope for 100 alliances. However, imperfection is still room for improvement. Come on. What is Professor Chen doing? No longer participating in the awards? That's right. What happened? Did he violate the unspoken rules? Damn it. Demand justice. Make it public. We can't let a hero be wronged. Soon, with the announcement of this news, the online public opinion circle exploded. Many people began to question why such a thing happened. At this time, the health committee was also very helpless. Director Deng had just become the director and encountered such a thing. To be honest, he was helpless. Also, to put it bluntly, in today's society, who could still follow Chen Song's unspoken rules, who dared to defame Chen Song like this, the number of people in China could be counted on one hand. When a person's influence was big enough, he was already out of the circle. Moreover, now, Dongyang Province's medical consortium was spreading to the whole country, and as the core of Xianxia, who could shake his position, even the leaders of the various provinces had to look at Xianxia's face. Was this exaggerated? No, it was not exaggerated at all, because there was no way to estimate Xianxia's influence. Putting aside the invisible and intangible thing of influence. Just looking at the industry alone, in the world, there were more than 100,000 major research institutes named after Xianxia's Research Institute. The number of people involved was as high as 10 million, and similarly, Xianxia had different branches in Mexico, Pakistan, South Africa, and more than a dozen other countries. These research institutes were protected by the local government army. In China, Ansu Pharmaceutical had become a dragon and became the world's leading pharmaceutical company. After all, antibiotic substitutes, painkillers, AIDS vaccines, and other new drugs were on the market. The impact on the market was very strong. Forbes and many other ranking and evaluation organizations had approached Xianxia and guaranteed that they would not count Xianxia. This saved Xianxia the trouble of being the richest man, after all, as a top medical scientist, pharmacologist, philanthropist. Xianxia, who was all in one, was not suitable to appear in the position of the rich list. However, every country and every financial group in the world knew about it. There was a behemoth in this world that they absolutely could not afford to offend, who knew how many lives were in Xianxia's hands: the Buffett family, the Rockefeller family, the Rothschild family. All these giants approached Xianxia, hoping to establish a friendship with Xianxia. Money, at a certain level, could be exchanged for invisible power, status, and even power, but it could never be exchanged for life. At this moment, if there was only one person in the world who held the password to life, it could only be Xianxia, in the face of the olive branches from these huge families. Xianxia did not refuse. But there were no promises. At this moment, he was no longer the immature youth from before. The development of medical treatment and even the development of technology could not bring happiness to mankind. It could not even bring peace to the world, quite the opposite. If one lost the most basic respect, what was behind humanity was definitely not heaven, but an abyss. Therefore, Xianxia chose the best way to get the world back on track. He hoped to promote the development of medicine, but not to let science completely surpass the perfection of morality and law. Xianxia had heard of a saying in the past: the end of science was philosophy, metaphysics, theology. There were all kinds of sayings. Xianxia had never seen the key points of science, nor did he judge the right and wrong of this sentence. However, he now felt that it was not important what the end of science was. What was important was that philosophy should accompany science. The development of science could not be separated from the progress of thought, morality, law, human nature, and so on. When the development of science was too rapid, it would no longer bring about the benefits of science, but a disaster of science. Just like the appearance of the atomic bomb, no one could clearly judge whether he was right or wrong. Perhaps it could be said that the atomic bomb made human nature more thoughtful and calm. Similarly, Xianxia really did not want to see the medical empire that he had personally created, or even the medical world, make mistakes because of him. Medical treatment could save mankind. However, it could also make people forget a lot of things. Xianxia back then could have completed more head transplant surgeries. But he did not even continue to take care of his brother who had his head transplanted. Because he did not dare to do it. Because in this world, there were actually many people who were above morality, law, and order. The only thing they did not have was longevity. Xianxia did not dare to do it, therefore, he directly announced that the surgery was unique and could not be replicated. Even if there was another one, Xianxia would deliberately fail. Human nature could never withstand the test. Because humans were full of variables. That was both a strength and a weakness. Xianxia was not willing to gamble. He only hoped that he could make some contributions to mankind. Therefore, he chose to retire. Moreover, emergency medicine was different from other books. It required Xianxia to seriously polish and think before he could write this book. He needed to settle himself. He also hoped to settle the adverse effects brought about by the rapid advancement of medicine. All of these needed time to digest. If there was only one thing in this world that was ruthless and also had feelings, that was time. However, no matter what, Chen Song's sudden announcement shocked the world. He was at the peak of his career, and he was in the prime of his life. Why did he suddenly withdraw? This news caught many people off guard. At this time, Chief Physician Deng of the Health and Wellness Commission had no choice but to ask Chen Song to come out and hold something like a press conference. Otherwise, he would really not be able to get through this, because it was not only the protests of the people, even the higher-ups were asking the other party why. Deng Gaoyuan felt very wronged. He really did not dare to. Did he not see how many people in the Health and Wellness Commission were Chen Song's people? How many people in the entire medical system were Chen Song's students? How many academicians in the two hospitals had to call Dr. Chen Song their teacher? What did Deng Gaoyuan do to deserve Chen Song's unspoken rules? However, at this time, Chen Song also realized this matter. The press conference was originally just a small press conference. However, it reached the top of countless media and trending searches. Hello, everyone. My name is Chen Song. The reason why I withdraw is, on the one hand, to give more young people some opportunities, and also to give myself a chance to settle down. For the next period of time, I may not attend any meetings or participate in any competitions. I hope that in the coming days, I will seriously study and summarize some of my experiences in a down-to-earth manner and turn them into a book. Thank you, everyone. Chen Song's words were very short, but it made many people unable to calm down for a long time. In the days after that, Chen Song really seemed to have disappeared from the world. He and Xianxia came to a quiet and strange city. They began the simplest and most simple life. Xianxia took care of his family's daily life. Chen Song read and wrote books every day. Xianxia was also gradually growing up and maturing. Life was not only about glory. And it also needed to find bits and pieces of true feelings and feelings in plain life. This was seriously considered by Xianxia and Chen Song. They also wanted to give Chen Yang a complete family and life. In fact, Chen Song also thought about retiring for a long time. Instead, he felt that this was the best choice. As for safety, in fact, Chen Song didn't need to worry about it at all. This kind of life was very smooth and comfortable. Every day, he would bicker with Xianxia and occasionally beat the child to vent his anger. However, there were also benefits. For example, during this period of time, Xianxia gave birth to a pair of twins for Chen Song. When the children were young, their parents came to help from time to time. After a long time, Xianxia could take care of himself. In addition to writing books, Chen Song occasionally went to some poor mountainous areas to do some volunteer medical treatment. It had to be said that, these years, the changes were really fast. Although Chen Song was not in the hospital, he was very accurate in all kinds of things. Moreover, with the system in hand, Chen Song could quickly formulate the latest guidelines. Just like this, time passed year by year, until the old leaders he was familiar with slowly grew old. Chen Song went to participate in the farewell ceremony of some old leaders. Time flew by. The old seniors, teachers, and old professors of the past also slowly left the world. Chen Song went to send them off. But, they were very happy. Seeing that the medical field of their motherland was so prosperous, they were happy from the bottom of their hearts. Spring Festival 2032. Chen Song was 40 years old. Many things happened in this year. Deng Ming became the president of the World Association of Emergency Surgeons. He finally got married and had children. Chen Song went to his wedding. He did not look for a bride. Instead, he hugged Chen Song and cried for a long time. He cried for a long time and said, "Teacher, where have you been?" Chen Song patted him on the shoulder and said, "You're over 40 years old. People will laugh at you if you cry to me at my wedding." Deng Ming shook his head and laughed with tears in his eyes. Wang Yong became the director of the general surgery department and took over Zhang Youfu's shift. Zhang Youfu came. But he was still the one who liked to post delicious food and show off his love in his circle of friends. During the new year, Chen Song visited him with delicious food. Chen Song ate the food personally cooked by his sister-in-law, Yang Tong. It tasted the same as more than 10 years ago. It had not changed at all. But Zhang Youfu was old. He was also old. When he left, he helped the child get 3 cents of New Year's money. Then, he accompanied Li Baoshan to drink some wine. Li Baoshan drank too much. He smiled and said that if he was not Chen Song in this life, he would not be able to close his eyes even if he died. He even said that if he had known, he would not have given the wine to Xianxia and the others. Summer 2036. Chen Song was 45 years old. Xiaochen went to high school and became a maniac who controlled his points. He would never waste a point. Qinyu finally learned to knit a sweater for the child. But Qin Yang never wore it because there were too many knots inside. Because of this, on Chen Song's birthday, Qinyu beat him up. Chen Song was speechless. He beat Qin Yang to vent his anger, while his brother and sister laughed at him. Qin Yang had no choice but to help his mother knit a sweater. And this year, old General Qin passed away. Chen Song did not go, but he sent the elegiac couplets. Over the years, Chen Song attended more funerals than weddings. He had a lot of friends despite the difference in age. So, there were many such occasions over the years. Maybe it was because people over 40 were as bold as mice and began to be cautious. This year, when Chen Song went to a place called Xiaoao village to see a doctor, he met a woman. When the woman saw Chen Song, she suddenly laughed. Chen Song saw the woman, who was wearing smart clothes and a white coat. Chen Song could not help laughing. "Teacher, your clothes are laughing. If you laugh again, your clothes will burst." Mengshi was still laughing. It was just that, her eyes were shining with tears. After the two looked at each other, they hugged for a moment. "Long time no see. Are you married? Get lost." "Haha, don't be so rude. I'm not married, but I adopted a child." "Oh? Where is he? What's his name?" "I adopted more than 100. That day, Chen Song and Mengshi chatted for a long time. Mengshi resigned from the hospital long ago. Meng Wanrong left him a large family business, which was enough for him to live a luxurious life. But these years, he taught medicine and began to sponsor those children. Now, although he was unmarried, his life was very fulfilling. This year, Lao Chen and Chen Bingxing's children got married. Chen Song went to attend the wedding. Old Ma was also there. He insisted that his second son and Chen Song's daughter be a matchmaker. Chen Song looked at Ma Erhan and rejected him, making Ma Erhan furious. He said that Chen Song was a bully. Chen Song nodded in tacit agreement. Old Ma was silent for a long time, and sold a courtyard house in the capital. That year, Chen Luo won his first Oscar for Best Actor, and his long-distance love finally got married. But, the marriage partner was actually Do Xian. Chen Song vaguely remembered the little girl with half of her face disfigured under the sun. Now, she was already the most popular singer in the entertainment industry. Time flew by. What could not be taken away had to change. Chen Song congratulated the two of them on their marriage. This year, Chen Song was 50 years old. Emergency medicine was finally completed. After more than 10 years, Chen Song seriously pondered and completed emergency medicine. This was a set of 15 books. For every disease, the treatment methods and techniques were written in detail. Chen Song took into account every possibility. When this book was released, it caused quite a stir, because Chen Song had disappeared from the industry for a long time. This time, the books made many people wonder if they were already behind the times. Who would write for more than 10 years? Indeed, nowadays, in order to increase the honor, increase the title of chief editor and chief editor, the experts wrote more books than they ate. However, Chen Song had really written all the insights of his life in this book. This was a book that could be used as a reference book and a guide. When many people saw it, they were shocked, because this was simply an encyclopedia of emergency medicine. At this moment, the world was shocked again because of Chen Song. And Chen Song did not come out. This time, he seemed to have really disappeared. Ding. Congratulations, you have successfully published emergency medicine. Completion rate is perfect. You have received the ultimate reward, family legacy system. Chen Song rolled his eyes. He glanced at Chen Yang, who had just been admitted to university and was bored. Chen Song felt that this guy should not need it. Family legacy system, When your family declines and your descendants encounter a crisis that causes the bloodline to be unable to continue, the system can be automatically activated. Chen Song sighed. That was it. He thought he could live forever, but, if he really lived forever, would he be happy? To be honest, he had the secret of the system. It was better to hide it like this. Thinking of this, Chen Song smiled indifferently. This year, Chen Song had disappeared for a long, long time. As a result, many people had forgotten about Chen Song and the young man who had saved the world. The great legend who led the development of medicine across the ages. It was only in history books or legendary stories that there was such a person. But in life, it was rarely heard of. This year, December 31st. The WHO Representative Office in Africa received a notification of cases of viral pneumonia in South Africa from the Pretoria Health Committee website. The Representative Office in Africa reported the Pretoria Health Committee's notification of these cases to the WHO Western Pacific Regional Office's IHR focal point and provided a translation. The WHO's Open Source Epidemic Intelligence (EIOS) platform also received media reports on the same cluster of cases of unknown pneumonia in South Africa from ProMED, a project of the International Society of Infectious Diseases. Several health authorities around the world contacted the WHO, hoping to obtain more information. January 1st of the next year. The WHO requested information from the South African authorities on the cluster of cases of atypical pneumonia reported in Pretoria. The WHO activated the Incident Management Support Team, IMST, under the Emergency Response Framework. The framework was used to coordinate the activities and response to public health emergencies at 3 levels of the WHO, headquarters, regions, and countries. Then, January 2nd. Status update. January 9th. The WHO held multiple teleconferences with global expert networks. January 31st. The WHO Regional Director for Africa issued a guidance document to all countries in the region, emphasizing the importance of preparation and early detection of cases. February 4th, Pretoria outbreak. February 10th, South Africa was sealed, the world entered a serious epidemic prevention and control stage. February 9th, a large number of infectious diseases appeared in many countries in Africa, and the number of infected people increased rapidly. End of February, beautiful countries condemned South Africa's actions. Beginning of March, beautiful countries were sealed, the epidemic entered a new phase, the unknown pneumonia was still spreading and expanding. April, the epidemic began to appear in Europe. May, when the epidemic was about to enter the country. People all over the world panicked. All the scientific research organizations, virus research institutes, and all the scientific research institutions could not solve the problem this time. People all over the world began to struggle bitterly. At this time, other than praying and not knowing what to do, ask Professor Chen to come out. The central government issued an emergency order and found Chen Song. And at this time, an old man, in his old age, with a stooped body, was walking against the wind. At this time, those old people suddenly had tears in their eyes. It's him. It's him. Professor Chen is here. We must be saved. At this time, many young people did not know who Chen Song was, and those old people began to tell Chen Song's story. That year, those years, it was at such a moment, when everyone was filled with fear of the epidemic area. Chen Song gathered his old companions. Dang Ming. Here. Wang Yong. Wang Yong has arrived. Luo Zhou. Luo Zhou has arrived. Chen Yang. Chen Yang has arrived. Who else? Here. 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 A great country, how could there be no doctor, robed with the king, white armor, going against the flow? This group of old fellows once again put on their battle armor and led the younger generation of soldiers on this path. This line, we will definitely win. The end of the drama, December 31st, 2020. We have walked the most difficult path. We have met the most lovely person. This book was written in 2020, witnessing our greatest doctors and soldiers during the epidemic. How could there be no doctor in a great country, robed with the king? Bless my river. This is a professional novel, and also a happy professional novel. It has accompanied everyone through the most difficult days, and also the most memorable days. Thank you, everyone, thank you. You have allowed me to write a story that I want to write. Everyone, we will meet again if fate wills it. When I wrote the last few words, the veteran felt powerless. My heart was empty. I will finish this book another day. By the way, if you are interested, you can take a look at the Easter egg chapter from 2000 to 2024. There are things to note about the new vaccine. End of chapter 2019. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the video to support the channel.